The Empty Throne, Chapter 13. 13a. Paisley. The stones were God's blessing, but with a steep cost, causing a divide between us and Alira. Embedded with personal cooling powers to endure the extreme heat, summer was immeasurably more tolerable for each of us. This allowed us to embark on many adventures, that is, except Alira, who refused to take a stone and was considerably less comfortable. I tried many times to give her the stone she left behind, but was met with obstinance each time. Alira would often stay behind at the manor, while the 5 of us enjoyed the outdoors. I showed them the caves, where we spent the day harvesting more firestone for future projects. We ventured to the forest, though the beauty of life had been drained from its majestic plumage. We did not return home empty-handed, though, and gifted Alira a new bundle of herbs for her stores. We even traversed the mountains. I nearly gave up several times, though eventually we made it to the top. It was well worth it to see the world below from a whole new perspective. Alira joined us for our visit to the library in town. Though it wasn't quite as spectacular as grandfather's, there were plenty of fantastic tales to occupy my curiosity. The beach was our most frequent outing, where all 6 of us could attend, and we made abundant use of it, as did the rest of the town. Many times I would catch Alira gazing out to the rocks cautiously, as if we were to be whisked away at any moment. We hunkered down for a picnic before heading back home. The smell of fresh-baked apples escaped the basket that Alira packed for us. We were ravenous with hunger from the day's swimming, and eagerly awaited the meal. Something sure smells good, I remarked. I could eat a whole griffin, I bet. You sure have been doing a lot of swimming, Paisley, Alira began. I thought you feared the waters beyond the shallows. What has changed? The group fell silent around us and turned toward me for a response. We all knew the answer to that question, but the topic of the stones was a tender subject with Alira, and best avoided. Though if Alira was bringing it up, perhaps she finally wanted to discuss what was bothering her. I weighed my response carefully. I no longer feel a sense of dread in the waters as I once did. There is a sense of calm and almost protection now as I swim. The rest of the gang nodded their heads in agreement. Don't you think it is odd that you have suddenly lost your fear of water? I feel these stones have too much sway over your lives. They influence you against your nature, Alira stated. But don't you do the same with your empathy? Ophelia interjected. Slight nods of agreement could be seen all around us as we waited for a response. Alira sighed, looking around at the faces before her, before turning her attention to the basket to pass out lunch. Clearly, she was not ready to go further with the conversation. These sandwiches are my own design, Alira said. They are made with fruit preserves and a creamy nut mixture. I have tried them, and I assure you that the combination is divine. She handed each of us a sandwich expectantly. Fenton took it eagerly, and putting full trust in his girlfriend, shoved the sandwich in his mouth. Raylan and Rawl followed suit, starting in on their own sandwiches. Ophelia and I were more hesitant at the prospect of a nut sandwich and waited in response to their judgment. This is amazing, Fenton said, with his mouth still full of food. He wiped at the fruit on his face with his sleeve, then looked to the other boys. Raylan matched Fenton's eager appetite and approval, while Rawl quietly nibbled at his sandwich in reflection. Well, what do you think, Rawl? Ophelia asked. Rawl finished chewing and seemed to search his mind for the correct response. He tilted his head upward and closed his eyes. This, Rawl started, caught in his thoughts somewhere. This reminds me of something I have had before, but I cannot place it, he finished. He lost himself again as it dawned on us that he might be remembering his past. Have you remembered something? Ophelia asked, clinging to his every word. Rawl finished his bite. then opened his eyes and stared blankly into space. "I see a woman," he started. "She is in a large kitchen, grinding up a bowl of nuts into a paste. Her hair is almost as pale as the flower that clings to it." He stood and spun around, lost in his visions. "What do you see?" Ophelia asked, having given up entirely on her sandwich, which now lay on her napkin in front of her. "Do you recognize anyone or anything?" It was as if Rawl were in a whole other world, and unable to hear our words any longer. We watched as Rawl walked from one spot to another, with arms loosely stretched out before himself, grabbing the air. Suddenly he stopped, and his eyes pulled back to the foreground. "What is it, Rawl?" Raylan asked, as he helped himself to another sandwich. "Did you recognize the woman you saw?" Ophelia added. Rawl shook his head, but said nothing. "Come on, buddy. You gotta give us more than that," Fenton said, finally swallowing his food. "What was all the touching you were doing?" "I can't really say who she was," Rawl answered. He looked down at his hands, seemingly trying to remember something. "I tried to interact with everything that was before me, but nothing happened. I just kept getting turned back around to the woman's face, but I cannot place it." "She must be very important to you," Ophelia remarked. "Perhaps your mother or grandmother?" "Perhaps," said Rawl, unconvinced. Alira, who had been sitting idly by, let out a little sigh. "And here I thought my nut creation was unique," she pouted. "I'm sure it is, Alira. I've never had its like," Fenton stated. "Have you guys?" All but Rawl shook our heads, commenting on how delicious and interesting the sandwiches were. Alira went on about her new recipe and other plans she had to improve it as we continued with our picnic. Ophelia and I eventually became just as taken with them as everyone else, and began adding little suggestions as well. It really was a marvelous treat, which henceforth became known as a nutty jam sandwich. We had just finished the last remnants of food when Alira announced she had one more surprise in store. She reached her hand back inside the basket, beneath the thin layer of cloth which wrapped the sandwiches, and revealed a piece of parchment. She handed it over to me, urging me to read it aloud. I took up the parchment and began reading aloud for all. "Dear students and family, the summer has come to an end, and I am excited to welcome you to the first year at Sator tutelage. Term will start on the first new moon of autumn. All students will reside at the tutelage during the year and will need to pack accordingly. Supplies will be provided, however, it is imperative that you bring your talisman with you. Family visits are allowed once per month on each new moon. Tuition can also be turned in during these times. Enjoy the rest of your summer. See you on the new moon. Sincerely, Jera." I sat there staring at the letter with excitement and wonder. This didn't leave much time to prepare. The new moon was fast approaching. "Isn't the new moon in 2 days?" Fenton asked, scouring the group for confirmation. "Yes," Ophelia answered. "But why isn't there more notice? School notices should give at least 1 month to prepare." "Actually," Alira began with a guilty look upon her face, "the notice came some time ago. Grandfather thought it best to wait to share it with you, in hopes that you would take up schooling here with your friends, though he did not want to influence your decision, so he let it go unknown until today." I felt all eyes upon me as I digested the situation. How was one to answer such an impossible choice? Going to the tutelage was my only option. So much work had been put into attendance. Could I merely throw it away and train alongside my family and friends? If I continued with my plans at the tutelage, would I be abandoning them all for a venture into the unknown? I knew what I truly wanted, but I couldn't bring myself to say. Alira placed her hand on mine, sensing the turmoil inside. I could feel the warmth of strength pouring into me as her empath abilities took hold. I could recognize the feel of it now. As I said, Alira, this is a choice all of your own. We must not interfere, but give you strength to decide. I looked around at my small group of friends. Each wore expressions of happiness, hopefulness, and sorrow mixed into one. Whatever you decide, we stand behind you, Fenton declared, as he leaned over for a hug. I'm proud of you and the progress you've made. He turned away, wiping a tear from his face with his sleeve. It was strange to see Fenton being so serious. I couldn't help but tear up at how real the situation had become. I couldn't agree more, Ophelia added, as the others agreed behind her. It was as if they already knew where my heart was. I choked back more tears, knowing that I would miss them all, and worked up the courage to speak. You are all the greatest friends I could ever ask for, and I appreciate all your support. I definitely need it, as I still intend to set off for Sator tutelage to train, I declared. Why don't we all give Paisley a celebratory hug in recognition of her abilities and determination to follow her dreams, Alira suggested. I was immediately surrounded and swaddled in a sea of arms, once again feeling the warmth of Alira's powers pass through me. I knew this time it was as much for the group as it was for me, as a sense of calm spread through us. I did not envy the burden she carried to shoulder the emotions of all around her. I embraced the flood of happiness that came. Images of our summer adventures were coming to mind, and I couldn't help but to just sit back and enjoy the moment.